Welcome to the With Purpose podcast. I'm Karen.
And I'm Chrissy.
Life is full of ups and downs, but through it all, there is purpose.
A purpose that encourages us, strengthens us, and ultimately glorifies the Lord.
Let's walk this journey together on purpose, with purpose. Welcome back to the With Purpose podcast with Chrissy and Karen. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, we really encourage you to go back and give it a listen first. It'll give you some helpful context and make today's episode even more meaningful. Alright, let's jump in.
Okay, so Israel obviously had a big effect in how you the picture, the animation part, and how you
yes.
and all that. So, but was there something that in this journey, visiting Israel, doing all the research that really surprised you? That looking back now, that you're like, okay, that was a big surprise.
Yes. Well, I mean, I have to take this opportunity to just talk about what it was like to go to the Valley of Elah. You know, like to me, that like going into Israel, looking for what can we know about David's time? You know, like so many of the places, like, oh, okay, Bethlehem, it's a modern city now. You know, there's not there's wonderful archaeological things that you can see here and there, but you don't get the picture of what it was like. It's actually more helpful to look at the outskirts and see the rolling hills that nothing's built on, because that's what David would have spent a lot of time on, you know. But the one place in Israel where it was like, I'm seeing very close to what David saw was the Valley of Elah. And like the great thing about that is like it's, our filters always were scripture first, then archaeology, then imaginative, like, because you're almost like going like location scouting whenever you can. You know, you can't help when you're going with a film mentality, you can't help but walk through these places, but then also be in your mind's eye imagining the characters walking through, you know, and like, oh, wouldn't it be cool? I never thought of that. Like, you know, how you would interact with that. And you start imagining moments, you know, but like in the Valley of Elah, what's really awesome is the archaeology and the story are just so clear. So like the Bible is very explicit about like how it talks about, it actually gives you pinpoint map directions to where the camps were and all those kind of things. So it says that the Philistines came from Gath, which they've discovered. They know where Gath is. So they know the direction they were coming from. And then it says that they camped between Sukkot and Azekah. And Sukkot was a small village town at that time, in David's time. So they were literally like camping outside a place. We're going to kill you kind of vibes, you know. And it says that there was a ridge that they camped on, or another hill. So they found Sukkot archaeologically, like you can go visit Sukkot, and they found Azekah. So we know, oh, okay, that's that hill there, that's Azekah, that hill over there, that's Sukkot. Yes. Between them, there's this big amphitheater kind of ridge. And then it says across from where they camped, which was called Ephes Damim, it means the border of blood. Or the valley of little blood drops. They said there was another hill, and that's where the Israelites camped, right? So we have this kind of geography. And then on that hill opposite this ridge, they found an ancient fortress. And it's like, they call it the Machu Picchu of Israel. Because like, as I was saying, so many places have other layers built on top, like, you can't really see Solomon's temple because there's, you know, all these different things on top of it, you know, and it's high, like 20 feet deep sometimes, that something is buried. But here, everything you see is from David's time. Like it's been dated like within the life of Saul and David, like perfectly with carbon dating, all this kind of stuff. And like the artifacts that they find there are all from David's time. There's no pork bones found there, which is another indicator that it was an Israelite encampment.
Sure.
And it just makes sense that it was a border fortress, right?
Yes.
Because Gath is right there. It has a commanding view of the valley. They could see if an army was coming. So it's just strategically, it's a great position.
Sure.
But they didn't know what it was. Like, no one ever thought much of this thing. It's only in the last 30, 40 years they started digging there and everything. But the other thing that the Bible account mentions is that once David killed Goliath, it says that they drove the Philistines back, and it says that they fell, talking about as they were killing the Philistines, it says they fell on the road to Sharaim, the Sharaim road. But for a long time, people didn't know what Sharaim was, because they never found anything about it, right? But Sharaim means dual gates, or two gates. And the defining feature of this fortress, despite it being such a small fortress, it's very unusual. There are lots of these fortresses all over kind of Israel. But the unique thing about this is that it has two full-size gates in this little fortress. And it's like a circular fortress. And the one gate faces towards Gath, where the Philistines came from. And the other gate faces inward to the country. Wow. So it's almost like it could have even been like an ancient border control, like where if you were coming from Philistia, you would have to pass through this. Like obviously that's conjecture, but like why have these big gates, right? And the gates are 4-chamber gates, which are distinctly Solomonic, that time period. That's how they built. So we were able to like look at this fortress and get like a perfect slice of the stonework, like the level of roads. So everything that you see in the film is based around like the level of construction that we saw in this fortress. And what's great as well is like now, we're seeing this. You're standing in the gate, and the one gate faces right at the ridge where the Philistines would have been camped, right? And in front of that, there's like a huge area that's kind of level before it drops down. And if you think about Saul as summoning everyone in the whole country to come and fight, the surprising part is I never imagined a fortress when it says the camp of Israel, right? Yeah. But like it makes sense because this can't hold everyone that's coming from all over. So they would have still had to set up this massive camp around the fortress. And it also makes sense that you would do it around a strategic strong point. So if things started to go south, you could pull behind the walls and defend yourselves. So it just added like a level of color that I never imagined, right? And the other little details are like the river bed that runs where David would have picked up his stones. Like it does this S curved bow, right? So it curves really close to the Israelite camp, and then it S's through the valley, and it ends up right at the foot of that ridge. So David could have like popped down into the valley, approached the Philistines without being observed, and then popped up right. And that's exactly what happens in the movie as well. Being there, experiencing it really had a big impact on Phil as well. Like he went and walked the river. And the thing that really impressed him was the sound of when you're down in the valley, in the riverbed, it muffles, like the sound passes overhead. So you don't hear anything outside. You're in this like intimate space. So it's almost like a little cathedral space. And then when you pop up, the sound swells. Like now you hear buses and highway. But like in the film, when David comes out there, suddenly you hit with the wave of the army sounds and the cheering and stuff. So like that's something that came straight from being there and experiencing it. But I could talk forever.
I love this.
And another thing that was wonderful is like the Bible gives so much clarity. It's like it says in spring when kings went to war. That gave us the season, and then to go to the Valley of Elah in spring and see those red flowers and see the almonds and blossom, that directly fed into how we portrayed it in the film, and like what you see in the film, in my opinion, is the most accurate depiction of that battle possible.
That's amazing. Like how you also just how you depicted it in the film is like it doesn't look like a war zone. It's like there's flowers and it's beautiful and there's river, and then it's just this war, and that's so cool to like. I would not have never imagined it like that. So to know that it was actually how it looked, and that you can still go there and you experienced it in a way that was like it's still pretty much how David would have experienced it. That's amazing. It's so cool to hear. I am just you can speak forever. I love hearing more about this. Yeah, so just, okay, apart from your Israel trips, what else went into your research? Probably like a lot of reading up, and the Bible is core to the storyline.
Absolutely, yeah. Reading the biblical accounts, and thankfully not just me, the directors are just ingrained and searching it. Like the first step towards making this film, when Brent was writing the script, he's like, I don't want to bring me into this, I want to capture what the heart of this is. So the first step was, he asked another guy that we work with, Simon, an amazing guy, but to put on a timeline every event that the Bible calls out about David's life, from the start to death, and we were going to go until he was crowned king. So all the events there, and then Brent just he did like a line of what can we include in this thing. Obviously there was a lot we couldn't, but finding that thread started with just like plotting the events in his life, and then digging into those things and weaving them together, and like at different points we had the Witch of Endor, but that it just didn't work. It wasn't enough time to go into it, and you always have to think about it in terms of like not just the Christian audience, but people who are coming at this with no experience, and like, what are you emphasizing about the story? Like, is this dark magic part of it what we want the audience to engage with? Is that really part of the heart of David? Because you're going to have to build it, you're going to have to introduce it, and then it's like for such a short thing, like, and does Saul's arc really need that point, like, to tell his story, So like there's a lot of, we can't include it all, but we did our best to maintain that heart. I just wanted to say the exact same thing. That was probably your guiding line, is like the heart. What was the heart of it? And I think, is it the verse that it started off with is a man after my own heart? I just told Lynton and Karen beforehand, we haven't watched a movie since Elian was born, and this was our first movie. It was Elian's first movie, watching again, and I think I started getting teary-eyed like from the beginning. Like when that verse came up, I was just like emotional to know that this is a film that is really true to scripture, and it's not ashamed of being true to scripture. It was like, that is what it is. You're coming to watch a biblical account of an incredible story, and that's what you're gonna get. We're not gonna hide it. I love the shaloms in the movie, and I love that. And in a time like we are now, where like people are just like mad at biblical things and Christians and Israel, all that, to just stay true to that and not shy away from it. I love that, and it made me emotional from the get-go. So, but just on that note as well, like planning and developing it, how long does it take to develop this whole world? Like probably like years. Well, my personal journey on the film, I think, was 7 years,
Wow.
And that's like intense work. That's collaborating with some of the best artists in the world. The best, one of the other best part of this, like, of course, like the experience in Israel, all that stuff, is just the people, like working with the team that I got to work with, and not always as the lead of the team, like often serving other roles. Like in research, there was like a production, a development phase of this, and a lot of amazing international artists joined us. An amazing guy named John Burton, he was the development phase production designer, and I served him, and another guy named Oman Serrano, amazing, incredible, like world-class, like character designers, Borja Montaro, Juan Pablo Lopez, just incredible guys, right? And I felt like I was just tucked under their wing to just like learn, and I was given the perfect role at that time to be head of research, because I could engage with them. I had a lot of experience in design and art, obviously, but like having that narrow thing of just saying, hey guys, they should be wearing this. Hey guys, they should, this is what they should be eating. Like we can't have them eating an orange or an apple. Like it should be a pomegranate or figs, or, like just having that hyper focus of like, and also just dealing with step by step the kind of problems. So I was doing work of a production designer, but under the wing of a more experienced person, and the kind of problems that you don't think. You're asking people to imagine a story and they have no context of this world. A lot of them haven't read the Bible or don't know what we grew up with, right? But the problems that you don't think you'll have is like the character looks through a window. What is a window in David's time? You know, like you have them drawing them popping open like a, you know, like England style panel window, or, you know, and it's like they're doing this and they're throwing barrels at each other, and I'm like, barrels weren't invented yet. That's not what a window looks like. It's like, so I ended up doing like so much art that was just like digging into like that fortress, and like I realized I had to go to the foundational level of like, this is how flooring was done at that time. Like, you know, they wouldn't have done paving. They would have just, you know, tamped down the earth, made it hard. They maybe would have put like a few stones here or there to reinforce. This is like, they didn't build every stair. Like Israel's a very terraced place, got to have like stone, so sometimes they would carve stairs into existing bedrock. A window is a small thing there. It's up high. It's not something you can just go and look out, you know, like, because it was dangerous. You know, you had to stop lions from coming into your house, so it had to be the small thing that's high up. And like doors, how do they work at that time? Like one of the interesting things is if you go to the fortress, the city gate is massive, right? But it's a city gate, singular. Like there's one hinge. So like I would always imagine like big double gates like opening, but like no, like it was a huge single thing with one massive hinge. So there's just a million things that you're asking people to do that you have to kind of go to the foundations and be like, please don't let them be throwing barrels. They would be throwing amphoras, and you know, so and
your knowledge must be
and turning on a light. Like, how do you turn on a light in David's time? It's like, well, you need to get oil. You need to put it in this little thing. And what is a lamp then? It's not something you hold. Yes. Because they read lamp and they put like a lamp in a glass, you know? It's like, no, it's a thing. It's like an awkward little thing that you hold and it has a wick, and you know, and that affects how they would move, you know, because you can't run with that, you know, it's sloshing around. So it just, all these little details that you don't think you'd have to explain, you end up having to explain everything. So so I don't know if I went way off on a tangent there.
No, we actually had a question where it was, is there a detail in the film that most viewers would miss? And now I'm like,
it's everything.
Everything. But the one detail that I picked up, and I was like, do I mention something? Is it a mistake?
Oh boy.
No. Goliath had 6 fingers.
Yes.
And 6 toes. And I was like, when I saw it, my eyes immediately picked up that something wasn't right about his hands. Was that intentional?
Yes.
Okay, good. Great.
Of course.
Tell me more about that.
It's just so funny that like when we started making this, AI did not exist, right?
Exactly.
And like I'm so thankful that I was doing my research in a non-AI thing, because Google is useless now. You cannot find anything except what they want to sell you, you know? So like at that time, you could search things and you would find results that are actually relevant to that, right? So thankful for that. But like, Goliath was deeply inspired by scripture of, you know, like there's other giants that are mentioned post Goliath. One of them is specifically called out as having 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot. And there's a lot of tradition about them actually all being in the same family. And like that's a genetic link, right? Like that's something that's was unique to them, other than their abnormal size, right? So I went through the perspective of they are not just because there's this whole thing, I'm sure you've heard people talking about it, like, oh, it was a pituitary gland mutation, and he couldn't see and he was led onto the field. Like there's all this like stuff. It's like, no, they betted their whole servitude on this guy. They would not do it on a ruse. So I believe they were well, like the Bible says that they were the sons of Rapha and the Raphaim. So that's like linked to all sorts of. Is it the Nephilim? Am I saying it right? Nephilim. Yes. The post-flood giants. Were the. Was there a link to that? Yeah, well, I think that the Philistine city, the Gath was conquered before by, they used to be known by the, I think owned by the Raphaim or the Anunnaki, or there's another tribe that was called giants. They were the giant people. So clearly the Philistines conquered it at some point, and they didn't kill everyone because they still have Goliath, they still have his brothers and family. And they're kind of just using them as their super weapons, you know? So the Bible's so much more interesting if you believe what it says, you know, and don't try and rationalize everything away, you know?
And we have to do our part to put in the time to dig a little deeper. And I think then as you find out these details, you just go to love it more, and you just it just stirs in you so much more, all the details, and it's amazing.
Just to say, I mean, in Israel, in the Israel Museum, there are giant spearheads, and there was a discovery of like a thing of armor scales and some really big, like huge spearheads. You know, when you come at it from a non-believing point of view, you say, oh no, that was a ceremonial spearhead, and that suit of armor that seems to be one thing was actually 12 people's armor, you know, like whereas if you believe the Bible, it's like, well, that's evidence that there were giants. You know, so anyway,
that's very cool. I did not know there's a museum that you can see these things in. That's very cool. If we ever go again, I have to visit.
Totally worth it.
Okay, but just then on the other side of things, was there a scene particularly difficult to design for you that you really struggled with getting it right, or a detail or anything like that?
Well, I think every part of it has its own challenges, you know, and like our desire to have like a really high standard made it harder. You know, like we wanted to incorporate so many of the tribes, and you know, like there's so much work that goes into building systems and having characters wear different colors and clothes, like doing their hair and all that stuff is super challenging. Just doing people. This was our first time as a studio doing like human characters. Before that it was Jungle Beat, lots of fun animals and stuff like that. So the demo was just to prove that we could do people, and the film was just to prove that we could do it well.
Well, I think you did it well, because I saw like a lot of people, and I'll say this as well, David, growing up, he grew into a very beautiful young lad.
That's scripturally accurate.
It is.
You did it so well.
And that's the thing. So like doing people is the hardest thing you can do in CG, to avoid them being uncanny, like unappealing, or like too realistic, not realistic enough, you know, to tell the serious story that we're telling. So doing people, having outfits that work, having armor that jingles, like the complexity of that is like off the charts.
I can't even imagine.
No.
That's amazing. But
one more thing I can say, like Samuel's beard was probably what most people in the production would vote as the hardest thing that was done. Like to render his beard and to load it in and have it work was heavier than the entire Valley of Elah set. You know? So like just to have that render and interact with the light the way it does was like the hardest thing in the film.
It was very impressive because he had hair. Like
he did.
I think we win the prize for the hairiest animated characters ever created.
I love that. That's so cool. But just going back to David growing up, I think one thing that also just stood out for me is how long of a time period there was between him being anointed by Samuel and then actually becoming king. There was such a long time period, and I was just, as I was watching this movie, thinking of David as a young boy being anointed, one of the youngest in his family, and having to walk this journey of how confusing it must have been. And you do that comes out in the film, like his personal struggles in that journey. It's just, I was very much touched by it because it can so easily be, he is a hero. He's a hero in our biblical, in our faith, one of the heroes. And we don't always think about the hard time he must have had I mean, it comes through in his Psalms. It does. If you read the Psalms, and you kind of see what he battled with in that. But still, just seeing that play out, it was so touching to see this young boy growing up into this man, and just him trusting the Lord through it all. I loved him and Jonathan's friendship as well, and I was also surprised by how Jonathan trusted in God, and how he was just like, just supporting David in that. It was so beautiful. It's so touching to see. But just coming back to the film, and how your heart, obviously the heart of the film was to stay biblically accurate as much as possible. That was the heart, but there was some creative liberties taken. How did you decide where to take creative liberties and where not?
Oh, well, just to say, I mean, like a lot of those decisions were outside of me, but also like deeply invested, and my job was just to support in every way, like the visual side of making it work and everything. But I think it honestly just came down to it's the media that you're working in. Like, this is a film that has to be as a broadly appealing to families. You know, we can't have David hacking off Goliath's head. That would not go well with families, you know, especially people who have no context of the scriptures. You know, like a lot of Christian people would like, oh, you could have shown that in this or that way, but like that's just not gonna fly in like in our time, you know, and also not what parents really want to highlight. You know, is that the core part of David's character that you want to take away from this? That's, you know, and you know, wherever we couldn't show like that part of a story, you will notice that in the tapestry that rolls down, you don't see Goliath's head. So
I did not notice that either. That's very cool.
There's some flowers strategically growing there, and the sword is pegged in the ground, you know. So we try to honor things that, you know, but not everything is suitable for like
the audience.
And also introducing, there's a lot of love interests, too many love interests in David's life, and like that's something we can't navigate in an honoring way, right? And maybe in a series you could go into it and justify things or figure things out, but in our space of trying to cover as much we did, we just, not everything would be able to be explained suitably.
And then it might end up being more confusing than anything else. So
yes.
But that's very cool. I keep saying something that touched me, but one of the things that touched my heart the most was the relationship between David and his mom.
Yes.
That was very special. That was surprising to me, a surprising element brought in. Was that on purpose? Was that a focus that you all said, okay, we want to put focus on that? You mentioned Phil with his mom and that journey. Is that directly related? And then also just, there was this dedication at the end to, like, that's where I kind of lost it, where it just said it's dedicated to moms raising children in a world to be correct. I don't know if I remember correctly, but courageous.
Yes,
that was amazing.
No, you made me tear up.
I love that.
No, it is deeply intentional. You know, like the thing is, like, David is a very male-dominated story, and it's like it is the most rah part of the Bible. You know, in that sense. You know, but wherever there were woman characters, we wanted to really give them a rounded presence in the film, and to like honor them as more than one-dimensional characters. You know, they're not just there to kind of window dress the story. You know, so that relationship between David and his mom was crucial. And it's also in this, not many people know this, but in the Psalm, David shouts out his mom's faith, you know, like mom, he even says, like my mother's faith, you know, so there's a definite like link between David and the faith that his mom instilled in him and nurtured in him, you know, or that he certainly admired it, you know.
That's amazing.
So it was like natural, I think, and honoring for Phil, who had such a strong mother influence and wanted moms to be portrayed not in the traditional just role, you know, but like in the vital spiritual role.
I love that.
So like having her at those key points as an encouraging voice and believing the vision, and like that why God, my God, you know, like the why God from David, the my God from Nitzaveh was so powerful. And that is like moms and their sons. It's always a special relationship.
Yeah.
But that did stem from Phil's mom being such an encouraging voice in his life. And as I said earlier, like David was killing Goliath at this age. Go live, like don't be safe in your life, you know. And Phil lived that out to the max, you know. You know, he was out in the African wild climbing things, and he really did encounter God in that, and the big vision and the free vision that he has of God comes from that, you know.
That was like our listeners know our story with Elian and just his journey, and obviously he's in a wheelchair, and as I was just watching it, I was thinking like he's going to face a lot of giants, and there's going to be so much that he will maybe only have like 5 stones in his hand but with God it's possible to slay those giants, and the role of my role, how important that is in his life too. So that had such a huge impact on me in his story as well, and our story, and it does encourage us in our walks, our lives, for all of us, no matter your journey. You sit there, you watch it, and you are encouraged, you are strengthened, you are reminded of what God can do with the little that you bring to the table. He can use that,
absolutely,
and he can slay giants with that. So that was absolutely a standout part of the film for me.
I mean, just watching the film, it impacts you. But now, how did it change you personally, just working on the film?
Well, I think just like being just so aware of God doing good in the world.
Yeah.
You know, we are so overwhelmed with the negativity, and there's new levels of evil figured out every day, you know, like,
absolutely.
And we're just only highlighting like the evil in our media and all those kind of stuff. But like God is doing big things every day for good. It's just not shouted from the rooftops, you know. Sure. It just suddenly arrives, like David. Like a lot of people didn't even know it was happening. And yet so many people God had brought together and orchestrated their involvement in this thing. You know, through crises, they were pushed out of places that was the end, but then David was on the door, you know, and like they were able to give themselves wholly to that. And it was their heart, you know. So many people have grown up like working in the industry, not being able to work on anything of their heart and their faith. And then, you know, God brought them to David, and it was just like they could fully express their heart and their love for God in media, you know. And I think when you watch David and you feel this, there is this magnetism, there is this electricity in it, right? And I think that's God.
Definitely.
That's absolutely just his glory.
And just to add to that, the entertainment industry is a dominantly secular industry.
Absolutely.
So for this to come as this light, as this hope, as that's just the Lord that can do that. Is in this industry to bring truth and to inspire and to bring glory to His name. That's absolutely amazing. I love that.
And did working on the story of David challenge you personally in any way?
I think it's like it's the whole theme of like faith over fear, and like I am a naturally anxious person. Like I think I've grown up, you know, I'm aware of like we're all hyper aware of like the evils going on in the world, and that part of me that is so a blessing to my job of like going down rabbit holes and researching and enjoying that happens on a negative stuff too. And it can make you very like anxious and like you almost feel overwhelmed by like all the darkness, and you lose hope, you know. But like I think working on this has been a constant reminder of that God is bigger. You got to look not at the giant but at and like that's the best shot in David is like when Goliath is, you know, like in his power and in his arrogance and his pride, challenging God directly. And it's that weakness of, you know, taking off his helmet and exposing him. But in that, I just love that shot of it going all the way up, and you just can't even hear him anymore. It's so small, you know, and it's in that moment, like, and even when he falls, it's just this little poof. You know?
I was surprised by how that was like a very like quiet almost. I was expecting it to be this like bang, and you did that in a very silent and full. I
it's
love
to show
that.
that he is nothing
Yeah.
in perspective of God.
Yeah.
Like
I love
your
that.
biggest challenges, your biggest
Yeah.
things are literally nothing compared to the
love
God that we
that.
serve. And like, and that. A lot of people won't know, like, but blue is a big symbol of God in our film. Like Samuel has the most blue on him. He's like God's representation. David has key bits. Nitzaved has the blue on her head,
Yeah.
and that's a color called tachelet. It's like it is the ancient blue that they wore on the corners of their tassels to remind them of God.
Wow.
And like the moment that is one of the most flooded moments with blue is when Goliath dies, because he's like, come down here and I'll make you kneel before me. And then when he gets the stone, he falls to his knees and he bows his head, and the screen is just blue. It's so like in that moment
It's
it's like, I'll make you kneel before me.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I need to go watch it again.
This is making me want to go and watch this movie again. Is it still showing?
Yes.
Out of interest.
Yeah,
Really?
there's still 2 screenings a day
Okay.
at Cape Gate,
I think at Tiger Valley as well. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I saw it still there. I
which
really
means
want
there
to
must be
go.
still a demand
There is
for
a
it.
I was just gonna
So-
say, because that means people are watching.
Yeah, so
That's a couple of
amazing.
months in. That's impressive.
yeah,
So, for young creatives who want to honor God with their gifts, what can you say to them?
well, I think it's just you've got to just trust God. You got to like submit yourself to Him, submit your journey to Him.
Yeah.
But also just know that there is a creative life for those who want to. I think creativity, when I was growing up, was very downplayed. It's like don't do that, serve God, you know. But like God can use your loaves and fishes, you know. He can use a worm, He can use a donkey.
Yes.
You know, like
Yeah.
be encouraged.
Yeah.
But like for real, like you got to strive for excellence.
Yeah.
Like I think a saying that I heard recently, and this was after David, but it was somebody who was reviewing David, and it was so poignant. I think Martin Luther said, like, the Christian shoemaker does not serve God by stamping little crosses on his shoes. He serves God by making excellent shoes.
Oh.
You know, like
Yeah.
it's not just slapping a little cross on things that
Yeah.
makes it Christian media. It's excellence that
Yeah.
makes it a testimony.
Yeah.
So strive for excellence. There's no shortcuts, unfortunately. But like, have that internal standard and like and strive to be the best you can. And God can use you at every stage. Like, don't be discouraged. You know, measuring yourself externally, but also be real. Like you've got to strive for excellence, and
Absolutely, do everything as you are doing it for the Lord. And
Yeah.
I think we can do that whether you're creative or not. You can use these principles in your careers. So now that David is like incredible and out there, and I
Thank
think it's up for an Oscar.
well,
It's
it made the
nominated.
It made the list for being eligible to be
Yes,
submitted
like, that's
for.
incredible.
Yeah.
So, what's next for you? I don't know what you can say, but is there anything coming up?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't speak details, but I
Yes.
can say that, like, the studio Sunrise Productions that I work at, like, Phil and Brent and the creative leadership are still just as passionate about telling stories that inspire people and that are faith-driven and God-glorifying. So, we're working on biblical content. We're developing things that can come out and be just as inspirational as David. And all of our stories that we're throwing ourselves at right now to get funding or work on are in that way. Yeah. So I can't say much,
No,
but
stuff
it's
is
gonna
coming.
it's gonna be cool.
And also, I think if you want to follow Lynton, we'll put his details in the description. But he does post a lot about the behind the scenes of David. You can go watch there as well. And then maybe in the future you'll see some new things coming out as well.
And lots of books.
Yeah, and books, if you're interested in that.
I love that. Lynton, thank you so much. Thank you to you and your whole team for
Thank you.
what you put together, for the excellence, for the creativity, for honoring the Lord with your gifts. That's truly so inspiring. I know for me, who's not a creative, but I can just imagine so much more for people who have similar gifts, to be inspired to create, to use that to the glory of God. And we are touched by it. We loved listening. I loved listening to all these stories, and I can't wait to see what you're going to do next, and you and your whole team. And we just pray for you guys. We pray for the Lord to bless you, to guide you, to inspire you, and to continue using the gifts that He has given you for His glory. So,
absolutely. Thank you so much. We need those prayers. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and that's an awesome way how we, as the audience, as the viewers who watch these movies and enjoy them, can actually come around you and support you guys who are at the creative end of it. So for our listeners as well, let's all commit to pray for people doing such awesome work.
Amen. And if this conversation encouraged you, please share it with a friend who might need it too. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast so you don't miss what's coming next. Please hit the follow button and leave us a review. This really helps our podcast. And you can find us on Instagram at the With.Purpose Podcast. Also go check out our new website at www.withpurposepodcast.com. We'd love to have you there, and always remember that every day is an opportunity to live with purpose
and to the glory of God.